Yeah, everybody, thanks for attending today. It's, I think for a lot of you, evening, sometime depending on where you are, some of you might be in the afternoon, early morning for me. It's just getting up, enjoying my cup of coffee with everybody. And I just want to thank all of you for taking your time to attend the session today that I have. The thing that we'll be going over for the next little while is going to be kind of an ever-evolving topic that I have that really often showcases some of the coolest, latest things available in Power BI, especially when it comes to a lot of the tips, tricks, and techniques to kind of unlocking and creating new visualizations. But before we dive into the presentation itself, I just want to give a little background on who I am. So I've been doing work in business intelligence now for about 7 or 8 years, and I've been doing a lot of stuff related to development. I also passionately teach at the university here in Seattle, Washington, where I'm from. Teaching visualization and design and a lot of uses of Power BI. And I've ended up kind of collecting a nickname over the last few years of the VizWiz, or visualization wizard, that a few people in my industry have bestowed upon me. And I think it kind of works appropriately because it's been an area that I've leaned into where, you know, I think there's a lot of models and everything else that are built constantly that might have really good data, but the reports in many fashions might not be presented in a way that uses good visuals, or maybe it just doesn't look particularly aesthetically pleasing. It's, you know, it just doesn't have an artistic brush that's been applied to it. So that's really been kind of where I've leaned my specialty into, and a lot of the talks and everything that I share are often a bit about how to, you know, to present data in a way that's both meaningful, but also, you know, that has a bit of that artistic design element attached to it. It's, you know, mixing the art and science. So that's a little bit about me. And now what I'd like to do is, you know, talk a bit about what we're going to be going over as far as some of the demonstrations today. So again, what I like about this presentation is it's very modular, meaning I can expand and collapse it as needed. So given our time today, we'll probably not go through everything in this list, but I will also have references and links for other content online that you can look at for a lot of the stuff that you have in this list here, even if you're not able to see everything today, because I do maintain a YouTube channel where I release videos every week on a lot of really cool tips, tricks, and techniques in Power BI. But yeah, I think that this meshes a lot of techniques into Power BI together for us, and you'll just get to see a lot of really interesting and unique ways to utilize the functions and features available in the software, the tool set. But this is going to be mostly demos, so I'm going to go ahead and just hop into it, and then we can start talking about some of the techniques in Power BI. All right, simple one to start with, and this was one that's that can be easily applied. But what we have in front of us here is a line chart in Power BI with a couple of extra elements added that really isn't available for it out of the box when it comes to some of the features that you're seeing in front of you. And one that I'm referring to right now is all of these little conditional formatting dots aren't things that you can natively add to a line visual in Power BI. These are things that, while you might think is an easy switch or toggle, if you actually take a look, click on the visual here, go over to the visualizations pane, and check out the formatting, you'll notice that there's not an actual option in data colors for any type of conditional formatting. And the thing that I'm trying to show you that isn't here, for those of you not less familiar with Power BI, is typically what you would expect is a little button here that has an f of x symbol in it. And that would usually mean you can apply some type of conditional formatting, and it is noticeably absent in this visual. So the way that I came across this one, I love to describe this as a happy accident. So what Power BI does, and I think one of the great features of it, is when you are exploring your data, you can very easily swap between different visuals. Like, all right, well, what does this visual look like as all these different types of visuals, and, you know, maybe see which one might be the best suited for you. And it's nice to be able to have that option for exploration. And that also means that very often as a developer, the way I shortcut needing to do extra work and development is I will come in and I will take a visual, I will copy and paste it, and then I will swap out the fields, and that way I can save the title formatting, any background color formatting, anything that I've done as kind of a just formatting application over here. It's one way for me to save that work and reuse it. I can also use that format painter to do the same thing up here if I wanted to between visuals, but it's just one way to save myself time as a developer if I've done any type of formatting onto a visual on the page. So I did that one day. I copied and pasted this. I swapped it from a clustered column chart to a line chart, and these dots showed up. And I tried to figure out how they showed up, what was going on, and what I realized is that if you start with a clustered column chart or any other type of bar or column chart, you go over to the format painter, you come down to data colors, you have an option here for basically applying conditional formatting to this. So I've cleared that out. Typically what you would see is the f of x symbol here. That is the thing that allows you to apply it. But if it's applied first at this visual level to a visual that allows you to do it, and in this case, I'll just show you what it is. It's a basic 33% lower, middle, and upper for the just standard colors. Any rule logic you apply to create those colors, when you swap it to a line chart, let me actually backtrack I can keep there we go. One more time. And you swap it to a line chart, you will get those dots showing up. And now this is one of those scenarios where okay, it doesn't seem like it's supposed to do this, but it is doing this. So what I actually did is I emailed and I checked with the product team at Microsoft, and because I don't want to deploy something that might get a patch. If this is something that's going to disappear, I don't want to put this into a customer report that will eventually get updated, and then this goes away, and I've now lost a feature that I gave to a customer. So I did check with them. This is something that won't go away. I'm still waiting for the day that they just add the conditional formatting button natively to a line chart to have this effect. But achieving this by just simply starting with another visual, adding the formatting, and then switching it over will give you these additional lines, which provides some of that additional value where you can have those little buckets for the upper, the middle, and the lower. And so it does provide those additional insights and KPIs to kind of show you those ranges with all of these colors, and it's going to be safely deployed because it's not going to disappear. So in a perfect world, someday I would love it if I could make this presentation obsolete and they just added an F of X button over here to allow you to apply it. But you can configure this by starting from one visual, moving to another, and adding those additional little dots in here. Granted, I would recommend doing this when you have less data points. If you were showing a line chart at the day level that had hundreds of data points, it would become very noisy to show a dot or a little KPI symbol over every single data point in there. It would become a little bit too cluttered. But for levels like this, where in my case I'm showing data at the month and year level, I think it provides a lot of additional value, and it's kind of a hidden upgrade that you can do for this that's safe and reliable. But yeah, that's my takeaway from this is, you can see the hidden feature. And two, again, anytime I show you any of these are going to be safe techniques, but you want to make sure that things that you deploy are going to be safe to deploy and they're not going to break. It's another word of caution as well on preview features. One of my favorite features of Power BI is the fact that there are preview features that you're able to turn on, from the options menu, and they're great, but those are the things that you want to be careful of deploying to production because they're in preview, they're being tested, they're being updated, and they might have a glitch or a bug in it. So, just be cautious of anything new or cool to deploy unless you're fairly certain it's going to be something safe and reliable. All right, a couple other things that I want to mention in here before we switch to our next section, as well, just as a brief mention of upgrades for visuals in your report. If you haven't used it yet, I would highly encourage you to check out the analytics pane. It's that little icon over here that looks like a magnifying glass. There's a lot of really cool things you can add very quickly from here as well. I'm going to get rid of everything I have in my chart and to show you how easy it is to put them back in. So there we go. Got rid of my forecast, got rid of my trend line. But these just add additional analytics. It's ways to help people show trends, patterns, analytics, as the name implies. And I think the line chart actually has the greatest number of ones available. The trend and the forecast are two of my personal favorites, and it's a really easy way just to click add, pops it in there. The rest of it's basically just formatting, but it does help show you, okay, well, taking a look, otherwise, kind of hard to tell which direction the data is actually headed, but there is an ever so slight increasing trend up in this case for this data that is much more apparent now that we have a trend line turned on. Same thing with the forecast line, fairly straightforward to add, and with a few options to edit with it. The one that I'll mention is the point here is useful if you have a, how would I say, you have levels of a hierarchy. So 10 points means that if I'm at the year level, it goes 10 years. If I drill down to the quarter level, it goes out 10 quarters. So it's 10 points of whatever is showing on the axis at the time. This is month and year, so 10 points means 10 months. In this case, I can instead just say, you know what, all I wanted to do is to be 6 months from now. Apply that there. Hit apply. There we go. A couple of other things that I'll mention. The ignore last is fairly useful. So if you often have open months, so in this case, just you know, the data is volatile and you haven't closed it yet, so you don't really want to include the current month in any kind of forecasting. You can just basically say ignore, and it will ignore the last whatever period you've selected in here. So doing that, you'll even see the line jump back. There you go. So it's attaching to the previous period because it's ignoring the current one. And then usually, depending on if you wanted just a straight line projection or any kind of seasonality, you can add some variation in there to give it more of the exactly seasonal trend of the variability versus just what is the general trend up or down that it's going into. But again, it's a standard algorithm for forecast that's used internally, and then it's really just a couple of adjustments that go into that as far as any small tweaks or configurations you might want to do. And for this first demo, the very last thing that I'll now mention as well is one of my favorite features that came out last year for Power BI, which was the visual header tooltip. So I used to build things like this into all the visuals on the page with bookmarks and pop-up windows and stuff, but man, that took a lot of effort and time to have to create bookmarks and all these text boxes that are hidden on the page that pop up when you click a button. And it took a lot of time to make these helper pop-up windows on the report. Now it's included in every single Power BI visual that's on the page or object. You can turn on a visual header that gives you basically text or a description or however you want to customize it. You're allowed to write up helper text to explain what the visual is doing, what the data has told you. It's a way to guide the users and help further explain maybe what they're looking at, especially if you're using a visual. Some of the more advanced ones potentially, if you are using any custom visuals, you might provide a bit of an explanation of what this visual exactly does and what its purpose is. So I really like to have that. However, my upgrade and the workaround is the fact that if I come over to the format painter and show you where to turn it on, and then I want to show you the limitations. So I will say that it's not the best design of turning this on or off. So you'll notice that there is a visual header menu right now that we have, a submenu. Well, by default, this isn't here. The only way to get this to show up, you have to first open the visual header window, you got to scroll all the way down, and you have to turn this on. So to me, I think that this option should not be here. This should always be on, and there should be, like every other menu, there should just be a toggle on and off right here next to it. So I don't know why they just didn't build, where's my cursor? There you go. This, I think, should just simply be right there. So it takes a couple of steps to get it to turn on, and to me, it's a little hidden. I think more and more people are aware of it these days, but there's still maybe even among the audience right now, there might be some people who don't even know that this was an option for the visuals. So it's kind of buried until you actually realize where it is. But once you turn it on, you have a menu that allows you to customize it, and you have a few options. By default, what you have is just standard text you can type in here, and that is a 250 character limit. That's the maximum text you can provide. Basic tooltip, if you just have a short description with a couple of sentences, you can type it in. However, you don't have any options to format the size. I'm sorry, you don't have any options to bold, italicize, underline. You basically are limited to what you have in front of you here. You have color, size, font, and background color. And that's the most you can customize this box. If you want to get around the limit, or if you want to customize it more, you do have the option to attach it to a report tooltip page. So in this case, I have a tooltip page created down over here. There we are. And a tooltip page just needs a couple settings to get it to turn on as this. It's a page that I've hidden down there, and the page itself has a couple of toggles you need. You just have to make sure that this is toggled on for Tooltip, so it recognizes it as 1, and then you basically customize the page size. In this case, a tooltip is 320 by 240, so it's just a small little pop-up window that will then show up on the other page when you hover. And the reason you want it small is you don't want to be loading a 1080p tooltip page. It'll take up your entire screen. So in this case now, I have basically a small report canvas, and it's just a text box that I placed onto there. I could also add icons. I could, in theory, add a logo if I wanted to. I can customize this page however I want. I have full flexibility now to bold, to underline, and italicize whatever I need to do on this visual, this text box better said, and configure it as I need. Even better is now with the smart narrative visual, which we'll actually be talking about next, what we have as an option is in the text box now you can actually click add value. You can search for a measure, and you can basically combine the native flat text that you just typed in, maybe with a total sales value or something else. So you can create a story with your data and do whatever you want with it to provide some explanation, maybe even with some numbers in here. And then that can show up over in this to be the more expansive and more detailed visual header tooltip if you need it to. So there's basically it allows you to expand out if you need to move past or customize more than just that standard text box with 250 character limits. But it's a great way to guide users on a lot of information when it comes to presenting them with some kind of helper text to just further explain maybe what they're looking at. All right, now before I do my next demo, what I always like to do is basically provide a little bit of a window for any questions if anybody has any before I move on to the next section. So you're welcome to bring it up now, and I don't know if people can unmute or not, but if that's also an option, you're welcome to do that and ask a question before I go to demo number 2. Just to make sure. Okay. And I will ask for the moderator too. Is I'm not usually tracking the chat window, so if there is anybody posting a message in there, just let me know. Okay, I'll go ahead and move on to demonstration number 2. Okay, so this is one that I actually did fairly recently, and it's the narrative visual tooltip that I was just talking about. So in this case, what I've built, if we come over here and watch the pop-ups, there we go. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit out. Okay, you can see it now. So watch the tooltip there at the top. You can see that this is the tooltip's been built out. They have a dynamic title that's included with it, plus this text box that's actually changing the values. We can see that it is saying in here total sales, and then a couple things that are changing dynamically with each hover. We have the number here. Anything underlined has been formatted, and it actually changes the value. So I have a lot of different information that's being presented about, in this case, this little filter that I'm hovering over. So instead of just a standard number to show up, I have a detailed text box explaining that for this, sales was 55, which was this percentage of the total bar, whatever their growth was for the current month, so how much they actually increased this month versus last, whatever their top selling product was. So I've created this rich narrative for a visual and placed it down into here. And honestly, the setup for this, outside of having to make the measures, wasn't that complicated. The text box allows me to do natural language searches and add it directly into there. So it's super useful to be able to do that. And I want to kind of just show you the build out of this, and and how to use the new narrative text box to be able to kind of write scripts like this for yourself. All right, there we go. Again, what you have with the report tooltip page is you can customize this and you can shape it as you need to. Notice versus the last one, mine's a lot taller. If I come back over to Format Painter, page size, you can see that I've just done a custom size of 343 by 450. So instead of having to do tooltip, I can do custom size myself and basically just reshape this. So as needed for the visuals that I have and anything else, I'm allowed to and have the ability to just resize this as needed. And a couple of little like techniques and tricks that I did here. One, what I'm doing at the top is I'm actually using a button to create the title, for my tooltip. That's the thing that you see that pops up that will show what is the brand and what is the class. Just as we're context again, that is what's showing up over here. This has brand and class for each one of these. So, when I hover over the green, it's Contoso Deluxe, but just to make sure people are aware of what it is, I'm including that in the tooltip so they can see Contoso Deluxe or AdventureWorks Regular. So it's to make sure that context stays and is very clear what data am I looking at as far as the filters being applied. So that's kind of the top section that I created here. And I've actually been using buttons for a lot of different things besides an actual button to click for bookmarks. The nice thing that I prefer about them is, unlike single value cards, a button has a button text option in here. I actually put a measure into this, but I also have the choice of alignment. So I can actually set this for the top. If I scoot out a little bit, you can see I can choose where to actually align this in any direction. And that flexibility is really nice. I would love if the single value card gave me an option to choose the alignment for the value showing in there, and it won't. It only does center. So to me, this has a bit more flexibility, and because of conditional formatting, in a lot of other places in Power BI, I can actually, instead of just typing in flat text, I can supply a measure in here. And that's what I've done. It's simply pointing to, I can Control Z, there we go. I was like, so wasn't doing back. All right, so in here, what I have, there we go. I just have a measure, which is Smart Narrative Title, and I'll show you what that is. Not super complicated, and then I'll show you the Smart Narrative as well. Title, there we are. Pretty straightforward. It's just a concatenation of a few values. Brand with a space, and then this basically, you can actually do a max and a min on text values now, and it's just going to grab, alphabetically the first to the last. But in my case, because I'm hovering over all of these elements, there is only one value to return because it's being filtered in the visual that I'm hovering over. So the filters basically just show me what the current brand name is, and then same thing, a concatenation with the second part, with the class, and then grabbing the actual class name. So simple concatenation, giving me this formatted title that's included here at the top. Now the Smart Narrative visual itself, that's one that I've been really enjoying using ever since it came out last month. And there's a few things in here that I've done. One, you can also actually just add icons in here. That part's really easy. That can be done with any text box. And the trick actually is if you hold the Windows key and press colon, you are given an emoji pop-up that actually allows you to search for emojis. So in this case, and again, what I did is, at least for Windows users, Windows key, colon. If you, in that order, hold down Windows key, press the colon, it will pop up that little emoji menu, and then I can search. So if I type in money, here's all the things that are related to money that I can put in there. So I can, there's the little money bag that I wanted to put in. So that's how I basically added these little symbols in here. I just typed them in. Now, alternatively, the various values that I have in here, and I'm not going to go through every measure that I wrote, because all of these are grabbing calculations that I've already written in my model. It's just basically saying, show me whatever this value is from any of the measures that I've written in here. So this one simply was total sales for the current month. So I'm going to delete that, and let's go ahead and add it again, just so you can observe at least a couple of these. So I'm going to click Add Value, and you can't just select from a list. You do have to use natural language query, so meaning Q&A, like the same Cortana, like Azure AI that they have, like that's what's going to be used to like fetch the data from your model, and you just need to type in the name of it. So in this case, total sales, and I could then grab that from there, but I want to say total sales, and you can see down here it's showing up, and then if I do current month, and there we go, current month ending calendar date. This one, sometimes it doesn't quite get all of it, and I'm actually not entirely sure what the independent versus dependent is. But what I do know is that calendar date from my calendar table, and it's further conversations to make sure that if you're ever doing time intelligence, you want to have a dedicated calendar table for this. So if I select total sales, current month, calendar date, it actually applies a date filter for me. Notice that this value changed. So I'm going to just copy and delete this so you can see total sales, much higher number. Total sales current month, reduced number. So you can see that the filter is being applied. So it's automatically taking this. This wasn't a measure that I wrote, but it is taking the sales measure that I have and then adding a calendar date filter to this. So there is some intelligence that can go on with your queries that it can apply some filters where, I found some other scenarios where I can say sales for product category Kitoso, and it will apply that filter for me. So there's a little bit of filtering it can do for you. I found it's honestly a little easier just to write the measure itself to do that than to try to rely on this outside of date filters. But it's still nice to be able to, in this case, grab one, apply a basic time dimension filter, and then to finish it off, name the value here. So just so it has a friendly name. So current month sales. There we go. And if you needed to, you could also additionally format it, but it will also pass through the formatting in the measure. So you click save. There we go. And it generates it. And now this, underline to make sure that it's clear that that was a measure that I brought in. And that's going to be a value that will be, there we go, dynamic. And it's basically going to generate that with the filter context that you have coming from the visual over here. Actually, there we go. Okay, just trying to get it so you can see it in the zoom mode. So you can see it's like 5545, 5569. You can see the number actually changing with all of this for any of the values that I'm hovering over. So you do get that context. It works very intuitively. Again, sometimes it has a little bit of trouble doing any kind of searches when it comes to trying to find the measure. I will say that if you're ever trying to look for a measure name and it's not finding it, I have found that searching for the exact full length of the name is one way to enforce it. So let's say you have, like, as a random example, this is the thing you're searching for. What I will do is occasionally just copy the name, and when I'm creating the tooltip and doing the natural language narrative in there, I will search for the exact name. I'll basically copy the measure name, paste it into there, and then it finds it. So, it sometimes has for long measure names, and it's a hard time finding it if there's 4 or 5 words in there. But if I copy and paste the whole thing, put it in, it seems to do a bit of a better job of locating it, essentially. So again, it's in preview. It just came out, but once you can get it set up, and if you have the right measures, and each one of these is something I built. I built a measure for total sales. I built a measure that will calculate the percentage of the class total. I have a month-over-month sales value and percentage. So these are all measures that are already in my model. I have a calculated measure that actually is giving me the top product name. So this wasn't something that I just said, show me top product. I actually wrote a measure and then I just called upon it. But you at least can harvest it, put it in here, and then have that rich narrative text combined into this. So it's a really, really useful thing with a lot of possibilities and many ways to customize it and places to use it. Are there any questions about the smart narrative visual? Okay. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, no problem. I can show one more thing, and then we can wrap up. Yeah, absolutely. All right. The last thing that I want to cover here is the idea of, I think one way that you will really start to explore unique possibilities with Power BI is learning that you can layer visuals. And that's something that you can do to kind of, basically think of it like Lego blocks. You're taking multiple things, combining them together to make something more powerful or more unique than something that's out of the box. And that's actually something that I built here in Power BI. Is I have a visual here, which is actually 2 different visuals. So I wanted to create a small, tiny little compact KPI card with a trend line. And The reason I wanted such a small one is, we have a report canvas with limited space, and every pixel counts. You want to fill it with information, but you don't want unnecessary white space or anything else. So in this case, what you can do, or what I've done, just to copy and paste, I've actually taken 2 different visuals, which is what I've turned into to create essentially this little combo card that I have into here. And when you group them together and when you publish them, the appearance becomes a single visual that you've had into this, but it allows you to do 2 different visuals to kind of combine to create the single one. So it gives you an idea of one what you can have. And the thing that I would even recommend is occasionally there are usefulness uses for custom visuals. And this is actually a sparkline by OKViz. It's a wonderful, compact little sparkline you can provide. There is no native visual equivalent of this. So those are generally my selling points for custom visuals, is when you have, when you've hit a wall that native visuals can no longer service what you need and you really want to go into the custom visual store, definitely explore it, look to add one from there, and there's certainly a lot of use cases for them. I will say that my word of caution is custom visuals, because of security reasons that I won't get into now, they will always load just a tiny bit slower, just to make sure that the report's safe and everything. There's reasons for that. But because of that, don't go using them when you don't have to. So native visuals can do a lot of things if you customize them and learn how to use them. But there might be some scenarios where a custom visual is useful, and highly encourage you to use them, but just don't end up with a report with 30 custom visuals on a page. It's going to be running very slow if that is the case. But as you can see here, a great way to kind of combine 2 different visuals into one. Then what you can do, you can use that group function to make sure that they stay together. And now you have a single visual here that can then just be moved around as a single entity. And the other thing that just came out with Power BI, because there's a few things that I can discuss, but the important one is, historically, you could accidentally do this. You would click the visual in the back, it would pop up to the front, and then it would make that line disappear. So that was one kind of headache of layering visuals, is you might accidentally cause one to pop into the other, and it looks like it breaks, So there's a way around this now. Now, if you select the back visual, every visual has this in Power BI, by the way. You can come over to the Format Painter, go to General. There's a new setting called Maintain Layer Order. So if you select that, it doesn't show up in desktop, but what that means is when I publish this, I can click on the object in the back. It's never going to show up in front. What it's enforcing is the ordering that we have over in the selection pane. So in this case, there's the group that I just made, and my sparkline's in the front. My other visual is in the back. So I've selected that. I turned on Maintain Layer Order, so that means that it's going to maintain this order. This will always be in the back. This will always be in the front. And as long as they're in a group, they have to be in a group for Maintain Layer Order to work, but it allows you to group them and then make sure that they don't pop in front of each other accidentally. So it's really, really helped for people who do any kind of layering like this to make sure that there's no glitches or bugs that show up when you publish it, where somebody clicks in the wrong spot, something disappears, and then they think they broke the report. And that was a headache before. I used to have to make invisible text boxes on top of them to kind of protect everything, and it was a headache sometimes to layer visuals. It's substantially easier now that this new thing just came out. I do a video on it, by the way, that I came out a couple weeks ago that talks about this new functionality. But as you can see, it's one thing that's really helped any of this custom visuals and layering stories that can be useful in some scenarios. I do know we're just wanting to wrap up somewhat soon, so I'm going to go ahead and show some of the closing slides with links, and I'm welcome to open this as well to any questions as we wrap up. Put my links up. So for you, what we have in front of us, QR code just takes you to my main website. There's also the presentation PDF and the links to a lot of downloads to all of the files as well will be available in this PDF. So if you download that and go there, you can, for any of the files that you saw today, you'll be able to download and play around with yourself. I also do have some links to the consulting services and a lot of other files and templates that I have available for Power BI. Kind of as a thank you for anybody who ever attends any of the talks and presentations that I do. I do have a discount code for my website, just 30% off anything available there. I highly encourage you, if you like Power BI and want to continue to learn, I have a YouTube channel with videos that are released every Tuesday, 5 to 10 minute videos on various tips, tricks, and techniques, and lots of cool stuff related to Power BI that comes out. So it's a great resource to learn, and it helps me. It continually, the more views that I get, the more YouTube recommends me. So it's very, very helpful when people are willing to watch the videos as well. And if you have any questions about Power BI, you're absolutely welcome to hit me up on LinkedIn and ask any questions there. And then last thing that I'll mention here is this link. So if you're interested, what I do is I provide a raffle for people who attended. This is a QR code that will just take you to a simple form. It signs you up for my blog. You can cancel it at any time if you want to. If you're already a member and a subscriber, it puts your name in the hat. But I will draw one name out of the hat, and that person will get I will schedule a 1 hour call with you, Teams or Zoom, and you can pick my brain on anything related to DAX, to Power BI, visualizations and design, modeling, basically anything related to Power BI. And I'll help you out, answer questions, even do, help you with some development issues if you might be having that. And again, just kind of as a way to, to help get my subscriber base, and to give you guys a chance to ask questions if any of you are interested as well. But other than that, are there any other questions that I can answer about anything I've gone over during the presentation?